In 1849, a British archaeologist named Austen Henry Layard was digging through the ruins of ancient Nineveh in what is now northern Iraq. Buried beneath centuries of sand and rubble, he discovered clay tablets covered in strange wedge-shaped writing. Tablets that had been hidden in temple libraries, restricted to priests, protected under penalty of death for 3,000 years. When scholars finally decoded these forbidden texts, they found a creation story that predates the Bible by at least 500 years. But here is what nobody expected. The ritual formula these ancient Babylonians used to describe how humans were made mirrors the actual process of genetic inheritance, with an accuracy that defies coincidence. Before this story pulls you under, consider subscribing, and do not forget to like this video. The tablets sat in the British Museum for nearly 3 decades before anyone could read them. Then, in 1876, a self-taught scholar named George Smith made a breakthrough. Working late into the night under gas lamps in London, Smith translated the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, written on 7 clay tablets around 1100 years before the Common Era. When he presented his findings, Victorian England was scandalized. Here was a creation account older than Genesis, telling a remarkably similar story, but with disturbing differences. The religious establishment tried to suppress it, but the text survived, just as it had survived for millennia in the temples of ancient Babylon. The Enuma Elish was never meant for ordinary people. Temple records show that only initiated priests could access these tablets. The penalty for unauthorized reading was death. For over a century, scholars assumed this secrecy was simply religious control, priests protecting their authority through mystery and ritual. But when you examine what the text actually says, a different explanation emerges. The creation formula it describes is not vague mythology. It is specific, technical, almost procedural in its precision. The story reaches its climax when the god Marduk defeats Tiamat, the serpent of primordial chaos, and establishes cosmic order. But creating the universe is not enough. Marduk needs workers to maintain the temples and serve the gods. So he executes another deity named Kingu and uses his blood as the essential ingredient for creating humanity. Divine blood is mixed with clay. Through this mixture, humans receive what the Babylonians called temu, the spirit or life essence that separates living beings from dead matter. This was not metaphor to the priests who guarded these tablets. This was a technical procedure. For over a century, historians dismissed this as primitive imagination. Blood and clay seemed like obvious elemental choices for a pre-scientific culture. But translation work by scholars like Stephanie Dalley at Oxford revealed something these dismissive interpretations overlooked. The Akkadian word used for what blood carries is temu. This does not simply mean essence or spirit. Temu specifically means plan, design, information. The Babylonians were saying that blood carries the blueprint for making a human being. 3,000 years before anyone had heard of DNA. Now consider what modern genetics tells us about blood. Every drop contains DNA, the complete instruction set for building a human body. 3.2 billion base pairs encoding roughly 20,000 genes. Your blood literally carries the plan for your construction. When Watson and Crick published their famous paper in 1953, they revealed that genetic information is encoded in molecular structure. Blood is an information carrier, exactly what the Enuma Elish claimed 3 millennia earlier. But the parallel runs deeper than ingredients. In 1985, a chemist named Alexander Graham Cairns Smith at the University of Glasgow proposed that clay minerals were the original templates for genetic molecules. Before DNA, before RNA, life may have begun on microscopic clay surfaces that organized simple chemicals into complex chains. The scientific community was skeptical. Clay seemed too much like ancient mythology. Then NASA got involved. Researchers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory began testing whether clay could actually catalyze genetic molecule formation. The results confirmed what Cairns Smith had proposed. Montmorillonite clay actively promotes the assembly of RNA chains. The clay surface organizes nucleotides into sequences, and it literally templates the formation of genetic information. The ancient formula of blood plus clay equals life mirrors actual origin of life chemistry. The parallels multiply when you examine the process itself. In 1958, Francis Crick articulated the central dogma of molecular biology. Information flows from DNA to RNA to protein. This is a three-stage transfer process. Genetic information is transcribed from DNA into messenger RNA, then translated into proteins that build the body. Information transforms through sequential stages, each step essential. The Enuma Elish describes creation through three stages as well. Divine essence passes from the God-King into the mixture of blood and clay, then awakens into a living human being. Stage 1 is the source of information. Stage 2 is the transfer medium. Stage 3 is the expressed result. The architecture of the process matches. Not just similar ingredients, but similar information flowing through sequential transformations. John Bottero at the University of Chicago noted that the creation ritual functions as a template for biological transformation. The priests understood they were describing a process, not just listing ingredients. Divine temu, the plan carried in blood, requires a substrate to become expressed in physical form. This mirrors how genetic information requires cellular machinery to become expressed in proteins. The information alone does nothing. It needs a medium for expression. The Babylonians understood this structural requirement. We face a problem. The Babylonians had no microscopes. They had no understanding of chemistry as we know it. Yet their creation formula structurally mirrors verified biological processes. Three possibilities present themselves. The first is coincidence. Perhaps blood and earth are such fundamental substances that any culture speculating about creation would naturally combine them. This explanation struggles to account for the specificity. The Babylonians did not just list ingredients. They described information transfer. They used words meaning plan and design. They outlined a sequential three-stage process. The second possibility is observation. Ancient peoples were far more sophisticated observers than we often credit. They practiced selective breeding for thousands of years, understanding that traits pass from parents to offspring. Perhaps intensive observation over countless generations yielded intuitive understanding of principles they could not articulate in modern terms. The third possibility is lost knowledge. Civilization may be considerably older than conventional history acknowledges. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe pushed organized religious practice back 12,000 years. The Sumerians who preceded the Babylonians already possessed sophisticated mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Were they inheritors of something older still? Here is what troubles scholars most. Why was the Enuma Elish forbidden? If these were simply creation myths designed to glorify the gods, why hide them? Religious texts typically spread. They are copied and shared to convert and inspire. The Enuma Elish was locked away, treated not as propaganda, but as operational knowledge. Perhaps the priests were not merely believers. Perhaps they were custodians. If the creation ritual encoded actual understanding of biological processes, it was genuinely dangerous information. The power to understand how life is constructed is the power to manipulate it. Knowledge of this magnitude requires guardians who understand the weight of what they protect. In 2003, scientists completed the Human Genome Project, mapping the entire human genetic code for the first time. But when we decoded the human genome, we may have only remembered something ancient. The Babylonians wrote it on clay tablets. We write it in digital databases. They called it divine temu. We call it genetic information. The medium changes across millennia, but the underlying pattern, information transferred through sequential processes to generate living form, remains remarkably constant. What other knowledge waits buried in texts we have dismissed as primitive mythology? The Enuma Elish was forbidden for 3,000 years, then forbidden by scholarly dismissal for another century and a half. Perhaps we are finally ready to read what the ancient priests actually wrote. The forbidden text is no longer hidden. The question now is whether we possess the wisdom to understand what it has been trying to tell us all along.